Recording live from Glory Hole Studios in Chicago and beyond. This is Cognitive Dissonance. Every episode we blast anyone who gets in our way. We bring critical thinking, skepticism, and irreverence to any topic that makes the news, makes it big, or makes us mad. It's skeptical, it's political, and there is no welcome mat. Today is Thursday, August the 3rd, 2023. Another indictment.
2 days after an indictment.
2 days after.
2 days after an indictment.
2 days. But the first time we gotten together since indictment number 3.
Time. And
this is starting to feel like we have a... Here's how crazy the world is.
It's beginning to look a lot like prison.
We have like a system we go through now when there's a presidential indictment.
Man. Yeah, man.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're right.
It's now happened 3 times. So now there's just like... Cecil just sends me a message. He's like, hey, man, do you want to read the indictment for our patrons, for our listeners? And I was like, oh, yeah, of course I will do that. And of course I did that.
Yeah,
we recorded it.
Yeah, and if you're a patron, you already listened to it because it came out last Friday.
But it's like, and I sent back, I'm happy to do it. I'll do it when the Georgia one hits, too.
I saw that.
Because the Georgia one is expected this month.
They're expecting it. They're talking about it. And, you know, like, as soon as it hits, we'll read it and we'll record it and we'll send it out. We'll be like, no, man, it's what I love, and I kind of wish I could include it, is Tom talks to me when he records it. so he'll mess up and he'll be like, I said that guy's name real funny or whatever. And it's really it's really kind of funny because Tom messes up. He doesn't mess up a lot, but when he messes up, he kind of talks to me and says, I'm sorry, man, that's just, I can't read this stuff. This stuff is goofy or whatever.
Yeah,
and
there's some real technical language I stumbled over.
There was a word
forth. Like certiorari or something, and I'm like, I try to pronounce it, like, I don't know, fucking centaurs. Yeah. I don't know what that word is.
I left a couple of your mess ups in because they were funny, so I left them in. So if you're a patron, you heard them already. I apologize if you heard a clap. Tom claps for me when he reads them so that I have an easier time finding on the WAV file the thing. So if I left a clap in, I apologize. Tom may have started saying something, said oops, and then clapped, and then there's a thing.
Did I do that?
I did a good job.
Oh, no.
I do a good job of trying to clean them up, but once in a while I may leave something in on accident. Okay. So, but in any case, if you're a patron, you've already heard the indictment Tom read. You might have already read it yourself. It's 45 pages. We are doing something a little different this week. Normally
45 is a good number for him. I just don't want to see 47.
47, no.
You know?
We are doing something a little different this week. We are, instead of doing our deep dive episode where we cover only one topic on Thursday, we're doing that today. So it's Monday. We're going to do that today.
It's just important enough.
This is one of these big things that hit, and the news cycle is constantly about it, and I kind of want to talk about it in depth anyway because there's a lot to talk about. Before we get started,
can I ask you a question? Do you think, and maybe this will just be part of the discussion, but do you think this is the most important indictment of? Let's say there's going to be 4. Let's say the Georgia one, which is very likely.
The Georgia one's more important.
See, and I think the documents case is the most important.
See, I think the Georgia one's more important because it's not a federal case.
Well, I think the documents case is the most easily prosecuted. It seems so cut and dry.
It's cut and dry, yeah.
So, like, to me, it's like, what matters is the ability to get through prosecution to a guilty.
Yeah.
And I feel so strongly that, like, although he's very evidently guilty in every case, like, just obviously so. But I think the money moving around case, the Stormy Daniels thing, that seems tenuous.
Yeah.
Like there's legal grounds that haven't been tested, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Then you got the documents case, which to me is like, you weren't supposed to have the documents.
You had them.
You had the documents.
The end.
You lied about the documents.
You tried to hide the documents.
You tried to hide the documents in your gold-plated bathroom.
Yeah.
That just seems like getting pulled over, like smoking fucking crack while the guy comes to knock on your window.
Offering the cop a hit.
Right. Yeah. And being like, all right, you got me on a DWI pretty good. Yeah. Like I'm gonna have to cop to that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I feel like,
and this one feels so political. I worry about and it's just it's not that the indictment is politically motivated, but just like everything around it is based in the political.
Yeah, I feel like the reason why I am leaning toward the Georgia one is because state rules feels like there's a better chance of something happening to him. There's a thought, was having a conversation with a couple people the night the indictment dropped. I was hanging out with some people and we were having a conversation. And several of the people, I was with a group of guys, and several of the guys were like, I don't think anything's going to happen from any of these indictments. And it's because they're so unused to seeing someone who has a modicum of power not get away with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're so used to seeing...
I share that cynicism.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I do too. And my answer is I don't know what's going to happen because I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. But, you know, I do. I'm with you and I'm with them in some ways where I think that. And one of the guys, I started talking to him and I said, well, what about this guy? What about this guy who have sort of, these are powerful politicians that have faced some serious issues. And he said, well, in that case, that was a state thing. And he said, you know, don't get me wrong, the states, it's different when somebody fucks up in a state than when they fuck up in the state, in the government. Because in the government, it feels like there's an easier way to brush everything aside. And when it's a state, it's harder for people because it's a little more specific. It's harder for them to brush things aside. And that Georgia case there's a phone call.
There's just a recorded call.
It's wide open for him to hear him saying, I need you to cheat for me.
Yeah,
I mean, it's right there. So I'm really anxious to see how this Georgia one shakes out. That's the one to me that makes me feel like this may be the part where he gets consequences.
And to your point, the other nice thing about the Georgia case, and the same is true of the Manhattan DA case, is that if Trump were to get reelected, he can't stop the investigations.
No, nothing he can do.
So if Trump gets reelected, I can't shudder. Like I feel like a cat like coughing up a hairball. My shoulders are going up. It's bad. But like he will immediately order the Justice Department to stop.
You have to stop.
Right. He'll be like, stop.
Go lay down.
Exactly.
Go lay down.
He'll hit the Justice Department in the nose.
He will hit him in the nose with a hidden document that he had stored at Mar-a-Lago for a while. He'll beat him with an archival box. Like, 100%, but he will send him to a room. He'll be like, no, go to your room.
100%.
And he's within his power to do that when he's the president. And so
he'll fire them all.
Big deal for this guy to get the process rolling quickly.
Yep.
That being said, Tom, can I start by just sort of summarizing?
Absolutely. And I'm sorry to sidetrack.
No, it's okay. And I'm going to summarize real quick the indictment, and then we're going to go through it piece by piece and talk about it. Yeah. So it starts out with the counts, and I'm going to read them. A conspiracy to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified by the federal government in violation of this code. The next one is a conspiracy to corruptly obstruct and impede the January 6th congressional proceeding at which the collected results of the presidential election were counted and certified in violation of these statutes. And then finally, a conspiracy against the right to vote and have one's vote counted in violation of this code. And so now they start working their way through the document, and the document basically starts and says, here's count one. Let's tell you all about count one. And it's kind of a fast one because at the end they're like, oh, and count 2 and 3 IBID. So it's all really, they're basically laying the counts. All 3 counts are essentially laid out, but they don't talk about count 2 and 3 until the very end.
Are there 2 or 4? Are there 3 or 4 counts?
So they say there's 4, but I just read what's on there. They say there's 4.
They say there's 4.
But I just read, and there's only 3 bullets. So I'm not quite sure if one of them is split into 2.
Okay, all right.
And I'm not a lawyer enough to understand where that split is.
Maybe the first one is 2 of them?
Yeah, I think there's one of them, and it might be the second one is 2.
Okay.
But I don't know enough about the law to know why it's split. But I have heard many people saying it's 4. But if you read the document, they only mention 3.
That's what I recall.
So I don't. I mean,
I read it 8 hours ago.
I don't understand any of that stuff, but I do know that they don't go into great detail to split these things out. They're basically saying all this stuff that we're going to tell you is for all the counts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Structurally, that's exactly right. It's like they lay out this whole narrative, timeline, and everything else. They're like, okay, all of that adds up to you done fucked up 3, 4 times.
3 to 4, depending on your counting.
Times.
I don't know.
Depending on, I don't know.
Yeah. So it starts out with the purpose of the conspiracy, which was, of course, to take the election and to lie to people and to remain in power. It talks about who helped him, his co-conspirators. And we will talk about his co-conspirators in detail in a few moments. Then there's an explanation of what the federal government and the Electoral College do in elections, which I thought was very nice to put in to remind people, by the way, this is how we do things.
It's a little touch of civics class.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, it's nice.
You know, I actually, for that part, I was hoping that a little talking Bill would sing that part to me.
I'm just an Electoral College vote. So they go on to how they went about their conspiracy, the manner and means. So here's what they say. They spread false claims, organized false electors, misused the Justice Department, tried to enlist the VP, and exploited an angry crowd to disrupt Congress. They go into great detail, and we will as well as we work our way through. But that's the main thrust of their argument. They detail how he knew what he was saying was false and fraudulent. Again, in great detail, tell you how he knew it, and we will talk about that. They list the people that told him that he lost and the evidence that he lost and the fact that he had no evidence that he won. And they do it in such a shitty, snarky way. We will get
Parts of it, guys, are funny.
We will get there. It's funny. This quotes that they chose to pick are fucking
bitchy.
Cherry on top funny. Next, they lay out all the things his co-conspirators did to try to overturn the election. Now, this is 20 pages, and it's broken down by state. So they list everything state by state. Next, they break down the fraudulent electors and how the false documents were created and how they sent them to Congress. Then they detail the Justice Department and trying to weaponize it to get the states to replace the electors. Then they talk about how the VP was coerced and they attempted to enlist him in a scheme through private and public pressure. They list his tweets. Finally, they spend one section dealing with how he exploited the violence at the Capitol to disrupt Congress, and then they basically say "ibid" at the end for the other accounts.
Totally do.
So that's the structure of the document, and we're going to work our way through. They spend a lot of time, Tom, talking about the co-conspirators. And so what I want to do is I want to bring up a news article that I found that talks about these co-conspirators.
And these are pretty easy to suss out, except for number 6.
Yeah, no, they don't even know in this who 6 is. So the possible conspirators are, one, of course, is Rudy Giuliani, and you know it's Giuliani because they quote him several times. And you're if you watched any of the January 6th stuff,
you know immediately
this is Giuliani.
So this one was a no-brainer.
This was a no-brainer. You knew it was Giuliani.
Slam dunk. And this one, you could even see in the indictment that there was some hair dye leaking down the side of the page.
Yeah, and part of this indictment is done at Four Seasons Total Landscaping.
Forever.
Yeah.
I won't sidetrack too far, but forever I want us all to bask in the fact that happened.
That is such the greatest thing in the world that's ever happened.
That guy's asking to be in charge again.
It's so amazing. And we'll talk about each one of these people in a second, but I want to just tell you who they are. Co-conspirator 2 is probably John Eastman. It's almost certainly John Eastman. And when I read through it, I couldn't believe it wasn't John Eastman.
It is.
Sidney Powell, co-conspirator 3, definitely co-conspirator 3.
No question on that one because they refer to like other people being like, I think that person's crazy.
Yeah, no, they definitely say that somebody's crazy pants, and it's got to be Sidney Powell.
Yep.
4 is definitely Jeffrey Clark, who is the underling at the Department of Justice that was angling for the acting head of the Department of Justice. He wanted to be the what would that be? Attorney General.
Attorney General.
He wanted to be Attorney General.
And he's just an environmental lawyer who, by the way, looks like a creep driving an ice cream truck.
He really does. 100%
he looks like a creep that drives an ice cream truck.
He looks like somebody that SNL found to make fun of somebody.
He seriously does.
He does. He looks like a caricature of himself.
His hair looks like a bad bald cap.
It does. It very much does.
I've never seen somebody's hair recede that far in a desperate attempt to escape that person.
Co-conspirator 5, attorney Kenneth Cheeseborough, probably.
I don't remember who Cheeseborough was.
Yeah, so he was talked about a lot in the January 6th stuff. They had a lot of.
He's not the guy with
fun of him. Talk about Cheeseborough. We were making a lot of fun of him.
Was he the guy with the baseball bat behind him in the videos?
No.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to remember who he was.
And then they don't tell you who co-conspirator 6 is. But I want to talk about Rudy Giuliani for a second.
Yeah, let's definitely talk about
because Giuliani's a big part of this entire indictment, Tom. Huge part, in fact. Rudy Giuliani co-conspirator one makes many, many mentions throughout, because Rudy Giuliani was the guy who was really pushing all these narratives to all these people.
Yep.
He was the one who was contacting different places around, different states around the country, telling them to, get new electors, to throw out results, to do all this stuff. He was acting on behalf of the president.
He was the fucking mouthpiece and thug.
Absolutely.
He really was. It's crazy when you read this. It feels like mafia shit.
It does not feel.
It feels like mafia shit.
And that's why it's so easy to see it be a conspiracy, right? Because it fits all the things you think of when you think conspiracy. When you think of a big mob case, this is what it feels like, right?
Yeah. And they don't ever say, just to be very clear, they don't ever say, let's do this illegal thing. But they come so close that, again, it's like, hey, nice restaurant you got here. Be a shame if something happened to it,
Nice electoral college you got here.
Right.
You want to keep it for tomorrow, you better give me the votes I want.
I'm just saying, if I win, then you're safe. And that's all I know how to guarantee around here, huh? It feels that evident. Like, it feels that thinly disguised. And the people that responded to it were like, this feels like thinly disguised pressure. They just flat out say a bunch of times, like, that's just illegal. Like, I took an oath. I can't, I'm a bad person and I still can't do that.
No, that's it. That's it. That's it throughout. And it feels like while they're talking, they should be frying up peppers and sausage. In a pan, talking to somebody, and then at the end of it, they should be handing them a money clip full of money.
For real.
That's what it sounds like.
Dude, these are like conversations you might be having at a strip club.
Yeah, very much.
Maybe you're having this conversation at a strip club where the women are bored.
I want to say, though, Rudy Giuliani's fucking career in politics.
Oh my God.
What a fucking crazy turnaround for a guy. A lot of people listening might not be old enough to remember 9/11, right? You might not be old enough to remember, maybe you were 10. Yeah, maybe you were 15.
Many were not adults.
But I was an adult at the time. Tom, you were an adult at the time. And, when that happened, I didn't vote for Bush, but there was not a lot that Bush or Giuliani could do wrong at that time.
Yeah, Giuliani was referred to as America's mayor.
He was America's mayor.
Yeah.
Everybody was
beloved.
oh my God, Giuliani's just fucking handling it, man. He's handling it. Holy shit. And then Bush, when he was doing stuff, we hate him, but at the time he was walking the streets of New York. He was there doing stuff. You got to understand also, too, there's a moment of being attacked where it brings everybody together. And so there is this thing that's certainly in the consciousness at the time that neither of those people could do a lot of wrong right around that time.
Absolutely.
And so, as much as we hate them today, at that time, there's a mindset that you had. And so, to see him now possibly maybe having a deal in this case, or if he spends the rest of his life in prison or something, how does that look in the history books down the road when they're like, by the way, America's mayor died in prison?
Dude, this era is going to I've thought about this before that there's going to be 100 years will pass, and if there's still books and electricity and that kind of stuff, which that's a crapshoot. I'm not betting on it, but if there are. This period of time will be written in a way that people are like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, who?
Yeah.
Wait, what? The amount of fucking insane head scratching that all of this will, with the benefit of some hindsight, require in order for us to because we're just living through insanity.
Yeah.
And like you said, the roller coaster of a career that Giuliani has had. But my question to you is, do you think he'll flip? Because I do.
I don't see him not flipping.
I think he's going to testify.
I think, what I think? I think maybe, I was talking about Meadows a while back. Remember we were doing this.
Maybe he's number 6.
Meadows. Meadows isn't involved in any of this. Did Meadows flip?
That's true.
You know what I mean? I haven't seen Meadows' name, and he certainly isn't any of these co-conspirators.
That's true.
Where's Meadows?
I wonder too if Mark Meadows, because from that woman, the intern, Katie, I think,
Katie,
what was her name?
I forget her name.
I forgot her last name. So forgive me because she did a nice job.
No, she was great. She testified twice.
I feel bad that I don't remember her last name. But, you know, it seemed like every time she went to Mark Meadows just playing on his phone and like staring into the middle distance. And I wonder if it's like hard to get shit to stick to a guy who's like busy playing Candy Crush while the world burns. Because that's kind of all it seemed like Mark Meadows ever did. Like she would go knock on his door and be like, Mark, there's a great big fucking emergency. And he'd be like, don't bother me now, kid. I'm about to get through level 397. You know, like
Cassidy Hutchins.
There you go.
It wasn't Katie.
It was not Katie.
I think of Katie Porter.
I'm sorry. I'm the worst. I don't want to confuse those two.
Cassidy Hutchins. And I wanted to look it up because you're right. Yeah. She did do a great job.
She did a great job and she testified.
And you're right. He was like he's like playing Words with Friends or something.
Right.
He's like super, like 2 dots. He's like totally into it. But let's talk about this indictment. Let's talk about, you start out with the like I had already read the charges, but they say Donald Trump did knowingly conspire, confederate, and agree with co-conspirators known and unknown to the grand jury to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function, which is the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified by the federal government. They're saying that he conspired, and the main thrust of the argument that I've seen so far from his lawyers is that it's okay to do the things he did. And in the indictment at the very beginning, Jack Smith says he can lie. That's okay.
He's allowed to lie.
He's allowed to lie.
And this is something I want to talk to you about.
He's also allowed to say those lies publicly. But what he's not allowed to do is to conspire with other individuals to try to subvert the election. If he would have never sent those people to talk to those different people in the different states. If he would have never done, any of the things he did, if he worked through the court system and he just lied speaking.
Yeah, if he just tweeted and talked.
I don't think there's a case.
There's no case at all. I do want to get off on a little bit of a tangent. I thought about this while I was reading that section. And it's something I wanted to talk to you about today is I know he's allowed to. I know he's allowed to lie. Should he be allowed to? I was thinking, why do politicians get the same First Amendment freedom of speech?
Yeah, no, you and I disagree. I don't disagree.
I think that they should be held to a different standard of truth.
Sure.
A higher standard of truth. We have this tacit sort of social acceptance, all politicians lie. All politicians lie. Well, yeah. Because we've enshrined a right that allows them to.
Sure, yeah.
But I see no problem, like we've talked about on the show before, having a carve out. Guess what? We carve out the civil rights for people all the time. Children don't have the same civil rights as adults. Soldiers do not have the same civil rights as civilians. Politicians working for the federal government can absolutely voluntarily cede those rights. And I don't see any reason why we don't bind them to the truth by oath and by law.
Do you remember, and of course you do because it's a very popular story, there is a radio broadcast Orson Welles did, War of the Worlds, where he told a story, made it seem like it was real.
Yeah.
And he caused real panic. Mm-hmm. And he had to get on the thing with a week later and be like, I'm real sorry. I didn't mean to cause it.
That's a radio drama.
I was just trying to make a good story. I wasn't trying to cause panic. But he did.
You did, yeah. Uh-huh.
And mass media makes your words, or can make your words, I don't want to say it does, but it can make your words dangerous. It can make people act on your words. It can change how people think and make them act. And if you deliberately misinform the public, and you know you are misinforming the public, I think that's dangerous. And we make laws about dangerous things. We shouldn't allow things to be so dangerous because people now more than ever are more easily swayed by a cult of personality, by a person.
Yes. Yep.
They're way more easily swayed than I think that we ever were. by, like influencers. Like he's a political influencer.
He is.
And when he tweets and when he talks, they listen to him and they hang on every word. And if he is out there misinforming the public, there should be something we should be able to do about that.
Yeah, man. I think like your relationship to the truth, to your ability to speak the truth, should be relative to the size of your megaphone.
Yeah.
Like the more access to a big fucking megaphone you have. And I mean, like, I think this should go for everybody, but I would be willing to say, like, at least just for politicians. Because again, the difference is a politician stands up, raises their hand, says, trust me, elect me, and then they work very, very, very hard to get everybody to trust and elect them. It's different than any other job.
You're right. It's very different.
And so, like, I know that we can carve out, because we already have a model for this. Like, if you join the military, you don't have the same civil rights as everybody else. No. And you sign off on that because you're now working for the goddamn government. I feel like if you're a politician, you're working for the goddamn government.
Right.
And I don't see any reason why we have to accept this, like, well, all politicians lie. Well, like, I know that that's going to be the defense. The defense is he has a First Amendment right to a freedom of speech. But and Jack Smith, and the point is like, yeah, all right, he has a right to say certain things, but not to pressure people into illegal acts. And that's what they go through great pains to sort of differentiate.
Yeah. Even Bill Barr at one point says something, I saw an interview with him, and he said something like, look, all conspiracies, even mob conspiracies, have talking. He's like, you can talk and you can say things. He's like, but it doesn't mean you're protected by the First Amendment.
Right.
But you know what's protected by the First Amendment? The sponsor of today's episode, Earwolf Presents. Looking for something new and funny to listen to? The comedy podcast network, Earwolf, has been cooking up something special on their Earwolf Presents feed. Every month on Earwolf Presents, you can listen to a brand new limited comedy series hosted by some of the funniest people out there, like Girl God, April Clark and Grace Feud, Oscar Montoya and Mano Agapion, and Jacob Wysocki. More like Jacob, why not Saki? I'm so very sorry. Oh, that's the dude from Game Change. And in September, the hilarious Lisa Gilroy. You'll find series such as The Girl God Experience, where April Clark and Grace Feud finally ask the tough questions and blow your woke mind. The Try Gays, where Mano Agapion and Oscar Montoya learn about straight things from people like Paul F. Tompkins and John Gabris. Expo Expose, where Jacob Wysocki takes listeners around to the various out there conferences and conventions. And coming in September, Lisa Gilroy brings you the story of the forever missing boy with the disappearance of Dickie Donnelly. All these series are weird, experimental, and just plain fun. Listen to all these shows and more on Earwolf Presents, wherever you get your podcasts. And on the real, Earwolf Presents is always, like anything with Paul F. Tompkins is, yep, get that. You talking you two to me, that's fire. Comedy Bang Bang, come on. Number one, how did this get made? All of them, I mean, they're all good. Just go listen to them. Okay, thank you. There's not even like a code. Just go there and listen to it and tell them we sent you. And we'll leave the light on for you or something. I don't know how we're to end this fight.
Yeah. So it's honestly, I think it's a fucking dumb argument.
It is a dumb argument.
And one thing that I think is also worth noting, and our listeners don't need to note this, but it's still worth putting in the back of your head if you have to talk to your Uncle Frank, is that the defense has never been, but those things were true. So if you've got a fucking Uncle Frank who's like, these things are true, you know what? Then why aren't they defending the facts? They're not defending any of this on the facts.
That's 100% true, Tom. And I think that's not something you should gloss over because I think it's super important. They do not believe it's true. And by them saying he's allowed to lie, you're saying, oh, so you're saying he lied?
Lying.
Are you saying he lied then?
Right.
And so, they're stuck in a corner. They've got to admit something here, and it's that he lied. But the other thing that, you could say to your Uncle Frank is, that's all well and good if you think the election was stolen, but why was it only stolen in the states where he had an opportunity to win by 1,000 votes?
Right.
It was only, he didn't fucking make a big stink about it in Virginia. He didn't talk about the Washington,
right.
He didn't talk about how Washington state had big giant fraud. He didn't talk about how California or Illinois or New York or any of these places that were automatically blue. He didn't talk about the giant fraud there. Right. He never mentioned any of that. All he talked about was the places where he thought he could win. Listen to how he talked about it on the night of. He wanted to stop counting where he already was in the lead, and he wanted to continue counting where he wasn't in the lead. He 100% wanted to win at all costs, and that meant disenfranchising voters. And it's evident and obvious from the things that he did, from the things that he tweeted, from the orders that he gave, that that's what he wanted to do.
And super important, one of the best things about this indictment for me as when I read through it is that, having lived through it, there was a lot of, and this is something that I think was very intentional, there was a lot of chaos in those moments, right? Yeah. Because there were so many claims, and they were being thrown around with such impunity, and they were being thrown around so rapidly that trying to grab a hold of what they were and to run it down and to understand it was daunting for anybody. For no matter how much of a fucking news junkie you are, it was daunting to just figure out what the news story is. Yes. Is it Hugo Chavez? Is it fucking Dominion? Are they fucking burning
votes on the train tracks?
Right.
Is there, did somebody have a USB port?
Right. It was always some new fucking thing, right? It was always some new fucking thing. What this indictment does really is two really important things in my mind. One, it demonstrates how that chaos was an intentional strategy, because
I have something to say on that.
They intentionally are look, we don't need these things we don't need the evidence. What we need to do is just throw it back to the state legislatures and say, it's all up in the air. And if you say it's all up in the air, then that lets us adjudicate this in the court of public opinion.
That's my foot in the door.
Yeah.
That's my foot in the door. And they were just trying to get something to stick to get their foot in the door.
The chaos was intentional.
You can see that chaos on display, or not see. You can hear that chaos on display if you listen to that call to Georgia. If you listen to that call to Georgia, listen to everything Trump tries to get to convince them that they're wrong. He goes through 5 or 6 different discounted, disproven theories to try to convince them that this is what they need to do. And every single one they were ready for, because they already chased down those leads. They already heard about it from his people, and they went and said, no, that was a fucking Tic Tac. She was giving her mom a Tic Tac.
Right.
No, that wasn't a big box of ballots that were wheeled in. You're missing the massive amounts of that.
It's because you got a better link.
Yeah.
Sorry, in the indictment, it refers back to when Trump was talking in the Georgia call, and they're actually, if you look at I have a link that has the full context. I don't need your link. I got a better link.
I got a better link. Yeah,
I got a better link.
Yeah, fucking, it's a sausage link, and it's his pinky. But listen to all the things he says. Listen to what he lays out, and what it is a classic gish galob, right?
Yeah.
It's a classic con to slam you with a bunch of information to wear you down, so that you're well, maybe there's something in there. I don't have time to debunk all this stuff. I don't have time to debunk it. I have to, there's got to be something in here if he's finding all this stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Well, and that method requires you put all this attention debunking the first claim, and that in the minds of other people, it leaves claims 2, 3, and 4 still unaddressed. Yeah. And that makes you look like you don't have an answer. But it's really just that it takes a long time to debunk bullshit, right? It takes no time to invent a story.
Yeah.
You can invent a story as quickly as Rudy Giuliani can fucking put shoe grease in his hair.
Right.
It doesn't take any time at all. But it takes time to debunk all that stuff. What is beautiful about this, and I think the January 6th committee did a marvelous job of this too, is that the antidote to chaos is a timeline.
Yeah,
every time.
You're right.
That is if the poison is chaos, the antidote is a simple timeline. And this indictment does a marvelous job of saying, here's what was claimed. And then here's all the reasons we know that this was not true, and that Trump knew before this that it wasn't true. And then after it was established that he knew this wasn't true, he still tweeted this thing out, or he still called these legislators and pressured them. So like they do this great job of laying out, look, it's not that he called these people because he knew this thing was
he thought this was
he
true.
thought this was true.
He was told.
He was told, he knew. He oftentimes acknowledged in other places, I know that's bullshit. And then he would still take what he knew was bullshit, demonstrated with a timeline, with dates and fucking evidence and everything else, that he took his bullshit and was like, all right, who else can I sell this bullshit
who
to?
can I give it to? And they do a good job in this indictment to really lay out the fake elector scheme.
which I didn't understand as well until I read this.
So I didn't
Not
either.
as fully.
And I didn't understand it based on the January 6th stuff, right?
Yeah.
There really wasn't part of it. It really didn't get dug into as deep there.
Right.
And wow, this fake elector stuff was really nefarious. It
was fucking so nefarious, dude.
Nefarious. Like, this is the part that I'm like very upset because they didn't charge him. They could have charged him, but they didn't charge him with like sedition and like seditious conspiracy, because a lot of these January 6th rioters are getting charged with this stuff. And they didn't charge him with that. And there's a couple of other counts that he might have been charged with. They instead went with this stuff, but you know, this is genuinely subverting democracy. This is him. And here's the thing, man. I fucking hate the Electoral College. It's a shitty system that gives votes to fucking land. That's what it does. It allows fucking Montana to get the same amount of votes as, you know, a place that has way more population. And it's because they're a state. It's because we've granted them their statehood that they're allowed to get these things. So I fucking hate the Electoral College, period. But if that's the system we're playing under, then that's a system we're all playing under.
And those are the rules.
And you can't be like, well, I want to try to fuck around with the rules and try to subvert these states because I know that these states will get this election to flip my way.
Right.
And then he's sending people there to just have like a cosplay fucking Electoral College session on their own. Like, they're just cosplaying it, man. You're not a real elector. And they just all went to a room and said, yep, Trump won. Anyway, let's sign the documents. And then they went and made an effort to get these to Pence on the day when he's going in so that there would be yet another way to get their foot in the door.
Yeah. And they were telling him, like, look, all right, just say that there's questions. Say that you have more than one. So here's part of the chaos strategy is if they get these fake electors to certify fake certifications and send in these bullshit fucking electoral votes, and then they wanted to like say, all right, well now Pence, we've created a situation where you could say to Pence, all right, you got two sets of electors. And now you can say, well, looks like there's some confusion. Let's throw it back to the state legislatures. And many of these purple states where things are in balance, they have state legislators that are red.
Yes.
So if the whole game here wasn't to count those fake electors. The game here was to use the fake electors to create chaos. Use the chaos to say, because there's uncertainty, we need the legislature to decide. They throw it back to the legislature, and they throw it back to the legislature in Georgia. It's immediately going to be red. Boom, he's got Georgia. They do the same thing in like...
And he's disenfranchised
millions of people.
Millions of people.
And he subverted the system.
He disenfranchised because he's not just disenfranchising the people in Georgia then.
No.
He's disenfranchising all votes across the entire country.
Everybody. Yep.
Every vote that voted for the other person because they rightfully won.
Yep.
He's disenfranchising, 81 million votes.
Yeah, and he fucking knew it.
He knew it.
That's the thing that like... And the one thing that like I seized on when I read this was that he knowingly did this stuff.
Yeah.
There is, I think, a contingent of people who might barely sometimes with a strong downwind and a good morning begrudgingly admit that perhaps Trump did some of this stuff. But they would push back, well, did he know?
Yeah.
He fucking knew.
He knew.
There is no question. He fucking knew.
He knew. Because he was told. They go to great lengths in this to list who he was told by.
Yeah.
And there's no way you're getting told by like national security advisors, the Justice Department, state election officials. They go through all these people. And there's a list of 8 or 9 different parties.
Man, his whole Justice Department at one point was like, we'll all fucking quit.
You're talking about an intense group of people who are in the know, who did their due diligence to track this stuff down. The people he hired to like monitor the election, who said it was the cleanest election in history. You know, these are not nobodies. These are people who you had in place to make sure that all this stuff, and none of them, not a single one of them says there's any fraud. In fact, they wind up recounting and you lose votes.
Yep.
I mean, this is an example of him being told something and not wanting to hear it.
Yep.
I don't want to hear it because he's not used to this. He's not used to somebody saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Trump, but you can't do that.
Right.
He's not used to hearing that. So his answer was, I don't want to hear it. Well, too bad. You fucking did hear it and you knew it.
Yep.
And then you tried to change it, and that's breaking the law. And I want to talk for a second about some of the pushback that was listed in this from these states, right? So the states, they go out of their way to list the states and the pushback that they give, right? The state electors are talking to Trump or his co-conspirators, and the state electors are saying, no, I'm not going to do this. And I want to read one part of it. When Arizona House Speaker explained that the state investigators had uncovered no evidence of the substantial fraud in the state, co-conspirator 2, who is Eastman, conceded that, quote, he didn't know enough about the facts on the ground, end quote, in Arizona. But nonetheless, he told the Arizona House Speaker to decertify and let the court sort it out, end quote. The Arizona House Speaker refused, stating that he would not play with the oath that he had taken to uphold the Constitution of the United States Constitution and Arizona law. I want to let everybody know this. Those are just words he said, right?
Yeah.
The oath is just words he said. He can be a jagoff and never fucking follow that oath.
Right.
We should feel so fucking lucky that enough people under Trump in politics cared enough about the United, because the oath is to the United States. The oath is to Arizona. The oath is to these, this Commonwealth or state or whatever it is. And the oath is to the United States, right? It's to everybody. He made an oath. They're just words, but he made an oath to you. Yep. He made an oath to me.
And to the rule of law itself.
He made an oath to all the people in Arizona.
Yeah.
And he kept his word.
Yeah.
And that is integrity and important. And even though I probably will never agree with this guy on a single thing in the world, I have respect for somebody who was pressured in this situation, and they said some words and they took those words to heart.
Yeah, well, and a couple of these people are like, look, I really wanted Trump to win.
Yeah.
So this is something that they want, right? This is something they believe in that matches their fucking shitty, awful, mean-spirited values, right? So like, these are people who are like, yeah, look, I mean, like, I still want this ultimate solution to happen here. I always said final solution.
Yikes.
We almost avoided that by a fucking hair. But like for real though, like these are people who are able to set aside what they wanted.
Yeah.
Personally.
And the words mattered to them, and we should feel lucky that the right people were in the right spots. You've said this many times, that some days just one guy puts on his pants and goes to work and he saves the world.
And it's insane. That's scary.
And there's been many times in history, and if you listen to Citation Needed, there's 20 or so episodes about that. But here's an opportunity where a bunch of people all across the country, they saved the country.
Yeah.
By not listening to him and by not becoming traitors to the oath that they undertook.
It's amazing that none of the people in these states bowed under that pressure. Yeah. Because none of them did.
None.
There are literally no examples of any of these people bowing under that pressure. I am astonished and so fucking grateful for that.
Me too.
Because I would not have bet that.
I wouldn't have either. I would have thought for sure one or two, and one or two states could have turned it.
Yeah.
It could have just been one or two states.
And they're in certain states, there were people gathering together to conspire as fake electors.
Yes.
So there were bad actors all over the country.
And they were ready to go at a moment's notice.
Yep.
So, I want to read some snarky stuff because I love both of these. Quote, this is from the indictment too. With respect to the pertinent false claim regarding State Farm Arena on December 8th, the senior campaign advisor wrote an email, quote, When our research team and the campaign legal team can't back up any of the claims made by, and this is all in quotes, or not all in quotes, all in caps, so like a title. So it seems like he's being very snarky when he says this. So I just want to read it again. He says, can't back up the claims made by our elite strike force legal team. You can see why we're 0-32 in our cases. Obviously, I'll obviously hustle up on all fronts, but it's tough to own any of this when it's all just conspiracy shit beamed down from the mothership, end quote.
I love that
I
so
love that
much.
it's included. I mean, I think it's like, mwah,
that is part of a federal indictment.
That's in the federal
That is in the
indictment.
record as
It's
a part of a federal indictment.
That Smith was like, I want to have, I don't care how it works, but conspiracy shit beamed down from the mothership makes it in this indictment.
Also,
yeah,
the elite strike force legal team.
So good. So good.
This is, like, there was a very like Team America World Police vibe to that whole thing.
The best part is
release the Kraken. Like
relatively close right after, they go out of their way to say on December 10th, 4 days after Biden's validly ascertained electors were scheduled to cast votes and send them to Congress. And I was like, ooh, sick burn, dude.
Somebody is sitting there drafting these legal documents and giggling. Like, I got him. I got him. Honey, come read this next paragraph. You're going to love this one.
You could tell, though, like he was including this stuff. I think not only is it funny for us, but it's also embarrassing. Yeah. Like the reason why he's saying it is because the things that they were chasing down and the things that they were doing were so absurd that they lost. They were 0-32 and their team knew it. Yeah. And their team made fun of their legal team because they thought that they were incompetent.
And they were making fun of their own strategies.
Yes.
They're like, this is like, are you kidding me? This is what we're doing? Here's the thing that like still blows my mind, Cecil, is wouldn't you just quit? I would have just quit.
I'm glad some of these people didn't, though, because the pressure, there's a part later on when a couple of the attorney generals, like the acting attorney general and the assistant acting attorney general, there's some things that this Clark does. Is that his name, Clark?
Yeah, Jeffrey Clark.
There's some things that this Clark does that's super shady. Let me find him real quick so I can tell you exactly what he did, because it's something that I didn't put together from January 6th or I didn't know. Because when I read it, I was like, what a shady fucker that guy is. I mean, you find out about it and you're like, oh, I can't believe this guy. So let me find it real quick. On January 2nd, just 4 days before Congress certification proceeding, co-conspirator 4, that's Clark, tried to coerce the acting attorney general and acting deputy attorney general to sign and send co-conspirators 4's draft letter, which contained false statements to state officials. He told them that Donald Trump was considering making Clark the new acting attorney general, but that Clark would decline Trump's offer if the acting attorney general and the acting deputy attorney general would agree to send the proposed letter to the targeted states. Justice Department refused. Also that afternoon, Clark met with the acting attorney general and told him that Trump, it says defendant, but I'm going to put Trump in, that Trump had decided to put Clark in charge of the Justice Department. And acting attorney general responded that he would not accept being fired by a subordinate and immediately scheduled meeting with Trump that evening. And after I read this, I was like, I want that guy in jail. I want that guy in jail.
Yeah, Jeffrey Clark?
That's a guy who's using his power in the Justice Department to try to subvert the national election. I want that fucker in jail.
I want that fucking weasel in jail too, because you can also read it between the lines very easily that this was just a guy who saw the chaos of the moment and was like, I can rise to the ranks.
Yeah, he's the Ted Cruz.
He is. He wanted to fucking slither his fucking way up the food chain.
Yeah, exactly.
By being like, if you don't sign this, he'll replace you with me. He's fucking worm tongue, man.
Well, he 100% is. And then later they're talking about the meeting that the acting attorney general had, and it says after meeting Trump, at the meeting with Trump, he expressed frustration with the acting attorney general for failing to do anything to overturn the election results, and the group discussed Clark's plans to investigate purported election fraud and send his proposed letter to state officials. So they talked about it at this meeting with Trump, a copy of which was provided to Trump during the meeting. The defendant, so that's Trump, relented in his plans to replace the acting attorney general with Clark when he was told that this would result in mass resignations at the Justice Department and of his own White House counsel. So he had to be threatened with another.
Yeah, basically all the lawyers are quitting.
What was that night during Nixon when the night of the... It's not night of long knives, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like there was a night where everybody quit, whatever they call it. There's a name for it. Somebody's going to send me a message and be like, Cecil, it's this. And yes, it's whatever. Because during Nixon's thing, there was a night when a couple people quit and they're like, oh shit.
Right.
And that's when he changed his tune because he didn't want to be known as a guy where everybody abandoned ship on him.
Yeah.
And Trump knew that would really discredit him.
And that's why, I just keep thinking, here you are. You know your team is 0-32.
Yeah.
0-32, Cecil. You know that all this conspiracy shit, none of it's real. None of it's panning out. You know your guy's walking out the door in 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. Why would I wake up? Talk about waking up and putting your pants on and going to work. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
If I was in the fucking death throes of this thing, I'd be like, my alarm would go off at 6 o'clock and I'd be like, honey, I'm rolling over.
Yeah, I know.
I'm calling in uninterested. I'm fired anyway.
I'm in the same boat, but I also am very happy that clearly some of these people didn't do that.
Same. Ultimately same,
because their presence there was enough of a deterrent so he wouldn't do those things.
Yeah, and maybe they saw themselves as a bulwark.
Yeah.
But also, a lot of them were like, yeah, I'm going to keep working toward this. I'm going to keep trying.
I know. That's the other thing that pisses me off.
So I'm sort of what do you find? If something's untrue and you got to wake up and go to work and be like, oh, God, I got to go to work and try to do untrue things, that would be really hard. Yeah. Again, I would be like, I just don't work here anymore.
Sure. I understand that, and I get that, and I'm right there with you. But
I'm not saying they should have. I'm just trying to understand.
I'm right there with you. I can't get my mindset around it. But it's their homer. They have a thing that they're like, this is the home team and we got to make sure we keep fighting, et cetera, et cetera. And so they had their plans to keep fighting, even though they're fucking losing every single game.
This is why I don't sports. I would be like, it'd be like the fourth inning or something. And I'd be like,
ice cream.
Dude, we're going to lose.
I saw the nacho guy.
I'd be like, there's beer in this place and we're going to lose.
And beer. I'm going to get drunk on beer pretzels. Are you kidding me? The next part of the indictment talks about the Pence pressure. And they do a good job, I think.
The in-Pence pressure.
There's not a lot of in-pants pressure when it comes to Pence.
No, there is not.
But so what they do a good job of doing, though, Tom, is they have this, clearly he's being talked to constantly behind the scenes.
Right.
And there's many... I don't know if there's not recordings, but there's definitely a lot of testimony about those conversations, about how he's calling Pence a pussy and how he's like, at a certain point, he says to Pence, you're too honest, because Pence won't do it. And
you're too honest.
So, I mean, that tells you all you need to know about Trump. But they also talk about the public pressure. And I think very rightfully, he was constantly, and they list all the tweets that he was sending out. There's all these tweets where he's constantly pressuring Pence to do these bad things. You got to do these things. You got to overturn it. You got to overturn it. And here's why. And Eastman comes up with this shit that he pulled out of his ass that he's going to try to tell you is true. And Pence didn't believe it, but there was intense pressure on him from both public and private sources.
Well, from public sources because of the private sources. And at one point, Trump even says, look, you're either going to do this for me, I'm going to criticize you publicly.
Yeah.
He basically was like, I'm going to throw you under the bus. And as soon as he said that, then they had to up his security and up Mike Pence's security because they know also, and this is the part that is also super important to me, is this inflamed crazy people.
Yes.
The biggest problem, the biggest terrorism problem that America faces right now is domestic right-wing terrorists. Domestic right-wing terrorists, according to the FBI, is the biggest source of terroristic danger we face right now. And Trump amplified that.
Yeah.
This is the same thing then. Imagine how imagine how up in arms, remember I should say, how up in arms everybody was when, you know, people from ISIS and people from Al-Qaeda were recruiting, and we were all worried about these like terror cells in the United States.
Yeah.
And we're worried about the communications from leadership, right? Leadership. That's what happened. Mm-hmm. We had leadership in the United States communicating with terror cells, right-wing domestic terror cells, and it freaked out the security apparatus enough that they had to be like, we have to protect the vice president from the president's supporters.
Yeah.
That's it. And I know everybody knows that, but like, that's so insane. You just have to say it out loud sometimes.
And you know what's interesting that's not in here, and they didn't even talk about it, but they talked about it in the January 6th stuff, is, do you remember that whole bit about Roger Stone going to talk to the Proud Boys or whatever, and like going and they're like all armed and he's going to hang out with them and whatever? Like, this is a guy who's involved with the president and seeing the president all the time.
Yep.
And he was involved with the president during this transition phase too. He's seeing him. These are two direct, you know, yeah, the president's not going out to this hotel to see everybody, but he's sending a guy who's constantly with him out to this hotel to see these Proud Boys.
Yeah, the Godfather doesn't attend his own meetings.
Like, this is some real dark shit that was happening that they pointed out. And then they do a good job too of showing how Trump used his social media on the day to incite this riot, which they're not saying he incited a riot and that's bad. They're not saying he incited a riot and that caused the insurrection. They're saying he incited a riot and he disrupted Congress.
Yep.
And that's a felony.
Yep.
And that's a felony. I think they
obstructed
get to 20 years or something. It's a big felony. You're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to obstruct proceedings. And he did that. And here's the thing. There's tweets and timelines that literally show that he did this. Like and I want to read a couple of things that are very important here. One of them is what you're just talking about with Pence. It says at 2:24 in the afternoon, after advisors had left the defendant, and this is Trump, alone in his dining room, Trump issued a tweet intended to further delay and obstruct the certification. Quote, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should be done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts and not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones that they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth, end quote. The next sentence is everything. 1 minute later, at 2:25 p.m., the United States Secret Service was forced to evacuate the vice president to a secure location. Trump also sent out 2 tweets that did not ask the rioters to leave the Capitol, but instead falsely suggested that the crowd at the Capitol was being peaceful. Here's the 2 tweets. Quote, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on our side of the country, on our side of our country. Stay peaceful. The next one is, I am asking everyone at the U.S. to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law. And our great men and women in blue, thank you. So he 100% knew he's watching television.
Right, yeah.
He knows there's violence.
Yes, right.
And he keeps saying it's peaceful. He lied then, too.
He lied then to give cover.
Yes.
Like that's all
because he's covering his ass.
Yeah, exactly. And he wants this to continue.
Yeah.
Right? Because we know that all he had to do was say, go home, y'all. And everybody goes home. We watched in the January 6th, we watched people holding up their phones, reading the tweets to the crowd.
Yes.
Oh, hey, he says to disperse, motherfuckers. Let's go home. And then everyone fucking goes home.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were literally just following his tweet orders,
for him
man.
to do this. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
He was the fucking general commanding that army.
Yeah.
That was his fucking bullhorn or whatever.
And
that's it.
And here's the thing. You see that. You see the evidence that they were doing, that they were listening to him and following his orders and doing what he said. And you know he disrupted Congress because Congress had to stop because of that crowd.
Yep.
I don't know how you get out of this.
I have no idea how he gets out.
I don't know how you work your... I don't... Like the rest of that stuff where they're like, oh, maybe there was a conspiracy, this or that. Maybe. But this... How do you get out of this? You have timestamps on the things you sent. People know you called people on the phone to talk to them. They know what those conversations consist of.
Yep.
They know these things. They see what you're doing. They see this crowd. They have video of the crowd saying, should we still be here? Should we not still be here? Yeah. He said, go and leave. And you know that he could have done that at any time, and he didn't, and he He literally disrupted Congress. Like, there's no way.
I don't know how you get out of it.
I don't know what you do. Like, I mean, this is getting caught with your finger in the pie.
It is. But here's what I think he'll try to do. I really believe that this will be the strategy. The strategy would be to delay, have an inordinate, crazy amount of witnesses, make the proceedings stretch out as long as possible, and hope he gets elected. Because even if it's in the middle of trial, he can just have it thrown out. If he gets elected, this whole thing goes away. He'll just make it, snap his fingers, the whole thing goes away.
Because the prosecution would just be like, well, we arrest, we're done.
We're done. Yeah, I think they would drop the case.
They drop the case.
They would just drop the fucking case. So I think he's just got to say, all right, look, I got to make it through till election time, and I've got to get elected. If he doesn't get elected, he's fucked.
It's 23. He's got a little over a year to delay
slow, man.
He's got to delay the court, and then he's got to delay his entire case that long. Does the judge, and here's the thing I don't know, does the judge have any right to say, no, you're calling too many witnesses? There's no need for those people.
I don't know that either.
I don't know.
We need a law talking.
We need a law talking person.
I don't know. But I know that like some trials can last months and months.
They can, for sure.
And this is a really complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not actually, but like the number of witnesses you could bring in, the number of experts. If this were me, all I would do is be like, I'm just going to delay that fucking thing.
And the thing is like Trump for his whole life has tried to do this with other people.
Yeah.
That's his strategy because he has more money than them and he doesn't pay people. So a lot of people work for free for him anyway.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't pay people. So he just says we're gonna run this out in the courts, et cetera, et cetera. So he does this anyway. So he wants it to get he wants to make sure that this is this goes long into the future. They were talking to his lawyer on TV, and his lawyer said something like they want to run this in 2 months. And the lady was like, this happened 3 years ago. Like you got to understand, like you had 3 years, you knew this was coming, you know, like, he's like this happened 3 years ago. You know, nobody's saying that this surprises. There's no surprises. So,
but didn't the first case that got brought, because only of the 4 potential cases, three indictments, didn't they set a trial date for the first one for August?
I don't know.
I think they did. I think they set the trial date. Let me double check that.
I'll look.
Because they wanted it to be fast.
This is New York?
Let me see which one was.
That's the first one. On January 29th, 2024, a trial is scheduled in the federal class action lawsuit accusing Trump and his company of promoting a pyramid scheme. And on March 25th, he'll face a jury in New York for state criminal charges that he falsified business records in connection with hush money payments to a porn star. So March 25th of 2024.
Okay. All right.
So that's already set.
Okay, good. And the other one's not set yet.
So I thought they sent something for December, but I could be wrong.
It would be awesome.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I obviously, the thing is that we've got to move quick.
No, something's got to happen.
We've got to get this thing to trial.
And I feel like this judge. So the judge he got is an immigrant woman. She's black, appointed by Obama. Everything this man hates.
Yeah.
So
how long until he calls her some kind of an animal?
Oh, I can't wait. Wait.
You know he's going to throw racist shit out.
He's already been, I think, warned to not try to disrupt this in any way. Like I think she's already said to him,
don't try to tamper with the jury.
Don't
I know
fuck
she
with
said
me.
that. Yeah,
don't
right.
fuck with me.
Yeah.
So I think her field of fucks is already barren.
Yeah,
I think
so
it's
too.
already barren.
And she has sentenced harshly.
Yes.
Harshly. Some of the January 6th
yes,
rioters.
You are not wrong. She has been the most harsh, and she has dealt with a lot of cases in this arena. Exactly. And very, very, very in depth with a lot of the people that have already gone through the justice system based on this stuff. So this is not a new thing for her.
Do you think his lunch gets eaten?
I don't know, man. Fucking Tom, I fucking hope so. If there's justice in the world, if human beings care about justice, yeah, he should get fucking eaten alive, man.
All right, so here's question number 2. And I know we're just goofing right now. We don't know. Does he still win the nomination?
Here's what I think is going to happen. I think that we haven't really seen the people who want to go after him hardcore yet because they haven't really done much yet. But I am anxious to hear. I want to see Chris Christie and him get on stage together. Man, I very much want to see that happen.
So far, up until this week, the only one of his the people primarying him that have criticized him have been Chris Christie.
Yeah.
But Mike Pence did it
too.
this week.
Mike Pence did it too. And we'll talk about it on the main show. There's people that want to kill him because of it.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that on the main show this upcoming week on Thursday. We have a story very specific about that.
So at some point, I think that the politicians will see the blood in the water. I really think that at some point, the politicians on the right will see the blood in the water. They will fucking attack. And I think that they will be the ones that rip them apart.
I hope so.
And I think if you're the Democrats, you just want to wait for it.
You just wait for it.
And let them all rip themselves apart.
Yeah, no, man, like this is you in your fortified zombie fortress and someone's outside trying to fuck you up and the zombies come. And they're just like, well, that seems like a problem. That seems like a you problem.
That's it.
Okay. Have the zombies fight the bad guys.
Yep, exactly.
And then whoever wins, I'll mop up.
Yeah, right.
But I'm not interested in this fight.
I'll defeat the wounded.
I'm not interested in this fight.
Yep.
And I want to see them tear each other apart because they're all bad people.
They're the worst.
And they hate each other.
Fucking worst.
And they hate the country. They're bad people, man. Listen, just, if you didn't listen to Tom read the indictment, if you read the indictment or if you read a synopsis of the indictment, just spend a couple minutes thinking about the stuff that was said in it and realize how much they wanted to, how many votes in this country they wanted to pull away and how close they were to doing it. And it's a terrifying thing that this happened. And I'm happy that not only are the things that we knew, January 6th Commission did a lot of this stuff and revealed a lot of stuff. But these fake electors is another thing that was a big reveal for me. And I'm happy to see that that's out in the open and out in the daylight.
Yeah, I knew peripherally about this.
Me too.
But I didn't know the details. And the details are so much more significant and nuanced, and like it was really big. It was a really wide-ranging conspiracy.
And everything that was done here is it is absolutely spitting in the face of justice. He wanted to he was so petulant and shitty, he wanted to keep that power. That's all he wanted to do. He would not take no for an answer. And he convinced scores of people to work for him to do this, and we're lucky that they could not be as convincing as he was.
So fucking lucky. Seriously, so lucky that genuinely monstrous people were like, even we have lines. Like, for real. There's
they got like a human leg sticking out of their mouth, and they're like, I'm not going to do that. That's crazy
says
shit.
no.
That's crazy shit. I ain't doing that. Yeah. So last week we mentioned that I had lost my job of 20 years, 22 years, and I'm now fully employed by the podcast.
You work for the glory hole, buddy.
Encourage people. A lot of them clean up at the glory hole. I want to encourage people, if you have disposable income and you like the show and you like the work we do, I am now a full-time employee of the podcast, and I would appreciate you signing up and becoming a patron. I also want to say too, I don't want anybody to think that I'm going to get kicked out of my house next week. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to lose my house. I'm not going to be destitute because I lost my job. I am working for this company, for this podcast. So I have an income, but I'm not going to, you're not
out on the streets.
I'm not out of work. I have a job. I'm not out on the streets. I'm not going to be cleaning out my house and moving because I'm in a dire straits. I don't want you to think that, because what I don't want is for people who don't have a lot to feel like they need to donate to save me. I'm not asking you to save me. I work for this studio. If you respect the work we do, we're happy to get your patronage. If you don't have the means, I don't want you to come up with those means. I am not interested in someone who is working paycheck to paycheck and trying to make, 2 ends meet here, and they think that I need your help. I'd much prefer that people who don't have means keep those means to themselves.
Yeah, we don't want to turn away patrons that want to support the show, but more than that, we do not want people hurting themselves to help us.
Absolutely.
So if you're in a position where supporting the show, supporting any podcast,
any podcast, yeah,
would be a detriment to you and your family and then don't do it. Please don't do it. Gratefully, don't do it.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
Listen, that's terrific. We love you. We want you to listen. We want you to be an audience member. That's awesome. But if it would hurt you and your finances, if you're stretched already, this is not the place to stretch. Don't look at your fucking cable bill and be like, I don't know if I should pay my cable or pay the guy at CogDis. Pay your cable bill.
Yeah.
Pay your other bills. Pay yourself first. Put some money aside for your retirement. For real.
Yeah.
Don't help us to hurt you.
I agree
Please don't do that.
Yeah, we don't.
That would not make us feel good.
I don't want to. I want to make sure people understand that I'm not trying to sell you a story about me being thrown out on the street. I'm not trying to sell you that story. What I'm trying to tell you is that I work for this studio, period. That's it. That's my job. If you think we do good work and you have money, free, like extra money that you were going to buy a latte with, and you think, you know what, I'd rather donate a couple bucks to CogDis this month because I enjoy their content, we are happy to have you. But we don't want you to hurt you to help us. That would something we would never want.
Never.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this week. We are going to leave you, like we always do, though, with Skeptic's Creed.
Credulity is not a virtue. It's fortune cookie cutter, mommy issue, hypno-Babylon bullshit. Couched in scientician, double bubble, toil and trouble, pseudo-quasi-alternative, acupunctuating, pressurized, stereogram, pyramidal, free energy healing, watered downward spiral, brain deadpan, sales pitch, late night info docutainment. Leo, Pisces, cancer cures, detox, reflex, foot massage, death and towers, tarot cards, psychic healing, crystal balls, Bigfoot, Yeti, aliens, churches, mosques and synagogues, temples, dragons, giant worms, Atlantis, dolphins, truthers, birthers, witches, wizards, vaccine nuts, shaman healers, evangelists, conspiracy, doublespeak, stigmata, nonsense. Expose your sides. Thrust your hands, bloody, evidential, conclusive. Doubt even this.
The opinions and information provided on this podcast are intended for entertainment purposes only. All opinions are solely that of Glory Hole Studios, LLC. Cognitive Dissonance makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, currentness, suitability, or validity of any information, and will not be liable for any errors, damages, or butthurt arising from consumption. All information is provided on an as-is basis. No refunds. Produced in association with the local Dairy Council and viewers like you.